G'day! This is a quick little lesson on home range. In your lecture, you might have already talked about home range. And I just wanted to go through again basically what it is with a few examples. Your home range are all the places that you go in order to survive. So it's all the places that a critter goes on a regular basis to get the things it needs to survive. Here's me. My home range includes the house where I live and my work, where I go to get money to buy things to survive, because I'm a human. So I'm not actively hunting for food or water. I have water in my house and I get food from a grocery store. So really, maybe we should be including the bank and the grocery store in my home range, because an animal in their home range would have a source of water and a source of food and a safe place to shelter. So my house is my safe place to shelter and it's my source of water. I have to go to work to get money at the bank to then have a source of food. And I know most of us aren't actually physically going to a bank anymore, but we do still have to physically go to the grocery store to get that food. I would argue that to be a mentally healthy human, majority of us needs some kind of social interactions. I have lunch with my father once a week. It used to be at a restaurant. Last few months it's been at home, but we're still having lunch together. And then this is my friends playing Rock Band, just because that was a picture I had of me being social, of people that didn't mind having their faces on the internet. Now, sometimes animals leave their home range. They leave their home range for very specific reasons. We call them excursions. Animals typically leave their home range in order to search a new mate or to find new sources of food and water. Humans usually leave their home range for curiosity. The top picture is my friends looking down the Eau Claire Gorge, which is a beautiful place between Mattawa and North Bay. And the bottom is from a local man's personal collection of antique snowshoes that I went to go see. It was amazing. I personally spent a lot of time going snowshoeing. It is one of my favorite activities. Now, some animals have two home ranges. They're migratory. When we think of migratory animals, the first thing we think of is probably birds, right? Geese. A lot of birds, warblers, our robins that we grow accustomed to every summer, they all live in and have a home range somewhere much warmer than Canada. And then they migrate north to somewhere that's safer for them to breed, that has a lot of food and fewer predators. And they have a different home range for the time that they're up north. And then when the weather gets cold, they go back home to their original home range in the south. I spend my summers at a camp where I take kids on canoe trips. So I have a second home range where I get my food and my shelter, and everything I need is totally in that much smaller home range than I have here in North Bay. And many students, maybe not this year in COVID, but many students are also migratory, where you have a home range at school and then you have a home range where your parents live typically. When I'm canoe tripping, I'm also nomadic. Nomadic are animals that don't keep a home range per se. They're more constantly changing. So they don't have a place where They're sheltering every night. They don't have a consistent food source and water source. They're constantly moving to new food sources and new water sources and following those food and water sources. So they don't typically have a sheltering place that they're protecting. No territory. So when I'm at my camp base, that's my home range, but then I'll go on canoe trips and be nomadic while I'm gone. Now I mentioned territory. Territory is the part of a home range that you defend, right? So you may travel all over your home range and share that with a lot of other animals, and same with the critters. But they only defend a small portion, and that defense depends on the size of other animals. Your home might be your territory, and you might defend it from other humans. You might defend it from insects, you might not, depends. You might consider your backyard part of your territory. If another human was in your backyard, you would defend it. But if there was an animal in your backyard, you may or may not defend it. And animals are the same way. A wolf is going to defend its territory from other wolves, but it's only going to defend its den from other critters that aren't wolves. So for me, basically my tent is the only part of my nomadic lifestyle that I'm territorial of. Maybe my campsite. I'm defending the whole campsite. And then at home, I'm defending my house. I'm protecting my entire house from all things, animal, insect, human, and I'm protecting my yard from other humans, but allowing other animals and insects on my yard. Now, my favorite question is why? Why do we care? Why do we want to know the home range? So mostly for management. If we want to help an animal, we have to know what it needs to be happy. So does that animal need, how much space do they need? How much food, how much water, what kind of shelter? If we want to reintroduce an animal that has gone extinct or the population has been shrinking, we need to know exactly what that animal that we're reintroducing needs to thrive so that that reintroduction sticks. And in some cases, we have fur bearers that we might be harvesting. We need to know everything it needs to be happy so that we don't take away too many other critters so that we keep that happy food web as well. Now, there are different ways to measure home range. All of them are assuming some kind of trapping and releasing and tagging. So the first one is a minimum convex polygon. So we would have a bunch of traps in a grid. Bear with me while I make my grid. It's not perfect. It's very far from perfect. Now, some of these traps are going to catch critters. So say we catch critters in all of these. Now, the minimum convex polygon style would say, let's just connect the dots. Let's make the smallest polygon possible. So let's connect all the dots. Oh, it looks kind of like a dog. Wasn't planning that. So that's our smallest shape. But some biologists would argue that just because we caught a critter right here doesn't mean that's the furthest it ever goes, but we didn't catch it over here. So that means that it didn't go as far as that dot, but it did go to this dot. So that decides, those biologists like to add what we call a boundary strip. So they go about halfway between. And they're like, okay, so we didn't catch it there, but we probably did catch it. It probably goes beyond those points. These are usually straighter lines. Now, other biologists are like, that's too perfect. That's too specific. These critters, they're going all over the place. They're not just following lines. Some people like to be more vague. So those people do the observed range length. So they take the two furthest points, so this point and this point, and they measure that distance. And then they use that as the diameter of a circle. So that's the middle. Then they make a circle. Not a perfect circle, but you guys get the idea. That's our observed range length circle. So those are 3 different home ranges that we've estimated based on our same data points. And that is all I have to say about home range for now. Have a good afternoon.